This show has been brought to you by Smith's Detection and the National Air Traffic Controllers Association.
My voice is the voice that guides you home safely each and every day.
24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
I am the voice of the safest and most efficient airspace in the world.
I have to be 100% of the time.
I am.
I am.
I am.
I am a professional air traffic controller.
Thank you for joining us. Today, my honored guest in the AAA studio is Mr. Elliott Black. Elliott is the director of the FAA Office of Airport Planning and Programming, and he's here today to talk to us about the AIP supplemental money that was provided by Congress. Thank you for joining us, Elliott.
My pleasure.
So it was wonderful. We got an extra $1 billion in AIP supplemental money this year. And so Congress passed that, but there's some statutory requirements, passed it off to you and said, Elliott, you and your team figure out how to disperse this to the airports. So tell us about that process first.
Sure. First of all, we had to look at the special statutory requirements, and as you said, there were different rules. One of the best things Congress did, they gave us 2.5 years in which to obligate it, and that affords us some greater flexibility. The money is all discretionary, which again gives us some latitude, but it also carries with it some restrictions on how it can be spent. And Congress dictated that we provide priority consideration for airports meeting certain criteria. And so we had to take all of that into account as we thought about the process to figure out how to get that money out there. And we had to do it with due consideration of how we manage the regular AIP funds as well.
Well, thank you for providing all that guidance. So there was the one deadline number 1,
Yes.
and that's been passed, and the Secretary announced the first round of grants at the end of September. Now, deadline number 2 is coming up. That's October 31st. So tell us, what does that mean for airports who still want to apply for money in fiscal years 19 and 20?
Sure. So deadline 1, as you said, was August 8th, and that was only for airports that met those priority consideration criteria and only for projects that were ready to go to grant immediately before the end of fiscal 18. Deadline 2 is fundamentally different. Any eligible NIPIAS airport is encouraged to apply, and it can be for projects that are ready to go now, or it may be for projects that are still in the planning or environmental or design phases. We have a little bit of time. And Congress made it clear with their statutory changes that they wanted us to try to use this money to help airports get to some projects that maybe we couldn't ordinarily get to. And that's really why we went with this supplemental process. Ordinarily, we work through the normal ACIP process, by which we have a multi-year planning process, and airports tell us years in advance what they're hoping to be able to do. With this money, some airports, particularly non-primary airports, may have a new opportunity. And so we really wanted to make it easy for airports to let us know what they're thinking and give us enough information that we could still make a fair and balanced assessment of all the opportunities out there.
So there's an airport watching today who has not applied but still wants to, and there's a couple of days left.
Yes.
Is it too late, or what should they do right now?
There is still time. It's getting tight. October 31st is next Wednesday. And we certainly need a fair amount of information. It's not totally simple. Hopefully we're looking at projects that are well through the planning process and well validated by the airport with due consideration of what it would take to get through all of the necessary steps. Certainly if a project is ready to go, that's a lot easier. But if a project is still in the planning phase, we'll expect the airport to tell us what it will take to bring it to fruition so that they could potentially be ready to take a grant during fiscal 19 or fiscal 20.
I know this might be hard to predict now, but after an airport's applied, how long could they expect to wait for an answer?
It is hard to say. We don't know how many requests we'll get, but based on our experience with round 1, we anticipate getting a lot of requests. With round 1, despite how tight those restrictions were, we had 487 requests, totaling $1.3 billion. Now that it's open to any eligible NIPIAS airport, we're expecting a commensurate increase in the number of requests. And because we'll have to look at a combination of projects, some of which are ready now and others of which are still in the planning phase, we're going to have to work through a very careful deliberative process to figure out what we can support. Moreover, we have to look at it in conjunction with the regular AIP. We still have $3.2 billion to push out the door for fiscal 19 and again for fiscal 20. And we're going to look at those pots of funds together with due consideration of all of the identified needs.
Well, thank you for everything you and your team have done to work with airports and get that money out to them. And I know that you're still working on this and don't want to think about maybe future years, but if we would get some more supplemental money from Congress next year, would you anticipate going through the same type of process? Is this something you think has worked?
Yes, the easy answer is yes. Again, it depends exactly on how it's worded. If it's the same sort of statutory rules, then yes, it might be very similar. If there are different restrictions in place, we might have to modify it. It depends entirely on how long we have to obligate the monies, how the money is structured, and if there are limitations on what types of airports. One of the other things is that a lot of airports out there are hoping that with the reauthorization bill that there will be supplemental funding, and that may then start to become part of a new normal that we could factor into the normal planning process. But again, we don't really know until we see what resources come to pass.
Elliott, before we let you go, you just updated the NIPIAS. Could you talk to us a little bit about that and the findings and how that relates to our conversation?
Absolutely. As you know, every 2 years by law, we are required to publish a new NIPIAS report, NIPIAS being the National Plan of Integrated Airport Systems. It does two things. It lists the airports that are eligible for AIP funds, and more importantly, it provides a 5-year forecast of what the AIP eligible needs are. This year, the report shows a significant increase from $32.5 billion to $35.1 billion over the next 5 years from 2019 through 2023. It's about a 7% increase. And if you look at that on an average basis, it's a little over $7 billion in AIP eligible needs on an annual basis, about twice the amount of money that's available from AIP. I should point out, by the way, with the update of the NIPIAS report, we also had to update the list of airports that meet the criteria for priority consideration under the 2018 supplemental appropriation. So that new list is now up on the website.
Okay, well, thank you. It certainly shows the need for further infrastructure investment.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much for being here. Thank you for all that you and your team do for airports.
A genuine pleasure, and thank you for AAA's support.
It's our pleasure as well. Thank you for joining us. For more information about the AIP program and the supplemental, please follow the links down below. I'm Melissa Sabatine. We look forward to seeing you again next time.